Uh, thank you everyone for joining this special meeting of the Town of Rochester Environmental Conservation Commission. It's 7:06 p.m. I'm going to call our special meeting to order, and our agenda is very short. We are just meeting to review the drafted letter that our subcommittee for town board referrals drafted after reviewing the application that was sent over to us for review from the Zoning Board of Appeals regarding the zoning appeal for the property on Towpath Road. Did everybody have a chance to read the letter?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, awesome. Does anybody have any comment? Is there any edits that we want to make, or do we want to go ahead and take a vote? I can say I, for one, thought that it was, I thought it was as strong as we could be as far as making our feelings on it clear. I know that it's kind of a, there's nothing more that could be said as far as I could tell.
Well, I had objection to some of it.
Okay.
Especially the area where it said because of the climate change, we are in the level where there's a lot more. We're going to see a lot more flooding things. Well, we don't know that. That is conjecture. That is pure conjecture. I would have rather that they had looked at the history of that property and been able to say, and maybe they can't do that, but maybe if there's people who know that property, they could see the property and say, well, in the last 30 years, that floodplain is flooded, a half dozen times. And if that's the case, you got to say, yeah, you've probably got a real problem here, and I would have rather had more of a history on that than anything else. But apart from that,
Good note.
I appreciated the fact that they said that it looked like the house was going to be on property that's, 3 to 4 feet above that level. But again, I think if we had some kind of a history on that would, we would be able to tell whether that was enough, or whether, it wasn't. And as far as the riparian cover, I think that was good. I think whatever they do, they need to keep the integrity of the riparian cover on that. Well, those are my comments.
No, I don't really agree with that, because I think that the whole idea of this, get 100 feet away from the streams, I don't see the point in giving variances. If you're going to do that, then everyone that wants to do that is going to apply for that. And I've already lived through several we had Irene, we had Sandy, and around here it was really hairy, for some people.
Well, I guess my point is that just because you have a rule doesn't make that it can't be worked well, and that's why they're asking for variance on that. And that's why I don't really like all these rules, because it puts the government in a position of power, and the homeowners have to then justify what they're doing. I would much rather it be the opposite way around. Homeowners come and say, this is what I want to do. And then the government can say, well, we don't think it's going to work, and here's the reason. So yeah, 30 feet may not affect very much, and of course they said 30 plus or minus. The house may be put on a piece of property that's 130 feet.
But aren't we a conservation commission? Aren't we trying to conserve things, protect things?
Well, regardless of whether the government says anything or not, the house could be possibly if it weren't within 100 feet, within 30 feet of a buffer, which should be, let's see, the stream is probably about 30 feet wide, so it should be set back 30 feet again to account for the buffer. Fact that it's 3 feet above, okay, but the shed is lower than that, pretty much the same plane as the property. So everything inside the shed and the shed itself and any kind of construction materials that are on the property when they are building it are going to end up down the creek and into the Rondout, and who knows how far down the Rondout. Whether it's the government telling you can do what you want with your property or not, that's what's going to happen, and I don't think that's a really a good
Well,
thing.
then that's the question I have, John, is what kind of evidence do we have that this in fact could happen? Do we have prior
Had a
history
flood 4
of
years
that
ago.
area flooding?
Well, the letter says could. It doesn't say will. So I think that is kind of the insurance there. It's saying because of climate change, this is likely to happen at some point. But it says could. It doesn't say it definitely will happen. So I think that sort of maybe is bridging all points here. I'm not sure, but that's the way I read it.
Yeah.
Well, we don't have time to draft another letter. This must be presented tomorrow,
Yeah. Well, that's
or it
fine.
won't be presented at all. So we need a forward vote or not.
These are good notes for us to consider for a future. We're going to get more referrals.
Of course,
So
many
we
people
can
want,
definitely,
yes, many people want to put their homes right next to a stream, and we found in the past it's a bad idea.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's why there's 100-foot floodplain there.
Exactly. Yes.
That's why there is that rule to keep environmental disasters like gas cans, oil cans
Yes.
floating down the creek and polluting the creek,
Yes.
or
Yes.
septic tanks or something.
Yeah.
I mean, that's where the environmental conservation, we're looking at the environmental damage that could happen if somebody builds a house within 100 feet of inside a flood zone.
Exactly. All right. How do we proceed?
Yeah, let's vote.
I want to make sure, does anybody, we've got
Michael Wassel.
a member of the public. Yeah, Michael, did you want to say anything before we take a vote? You're welcome to if you'd like.
Oh, thank you for that opportunity. I'm actually on the zoning board and I'm dialing in out of obvious interest to our referral to you all. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. Does anybody have any questions for Michael about the application before we take a vote? Or we could make some quick edits tonight if anybody wanted to ask him a question while he's here.
I would just make one clarifying comment, I guess. Apologies.
No, thank you.
The rule is 100 feet from the high water line, not the floodplain. So the difference, so you go along the stream, and as Bruce explained it to me, you start that 100 foot from where the vegetation begins to grow on the stream bank.
I saw that. Where I guess you're measuring your 100-foot mark, and I'd say what the house is about 30 feet from that.
You're testing my memory now. I think it's more like 70 some odd feet, and so the variance would be
A 30-foot variance.
the extra 30. Yeah.
Okay.
That's going from memory.
Yeah,
You look like you're thinking, John.
I am, because I didn't measure it, and I couldn't quite tell exactly where the house is, except that there is a rise there, and I assume that they would put the house there. And if they're going to put the house there, then the shed would be over here, where house is here. The shed comes down like that, so the shed is lower than the house.
Am I right? The shed is not there yet.
No,
That's
it's not
right.
there yet, where it's planned to be.
Yeah.
Mhm.
If I could add a little bit of information, that might be helpful. There are two lots adjoining each other. The one lot, which has its application in to the zoning board, is it doesn't have any structures on it right now. The adjoining lot, and the applicant has already gone to the planning board to do this, to join the two properties together. The other lot has a structure on it, an old cabin that's dilapidated, and it's much, much closer to that stream bed. It's practically on it, on the waterway. And again, my understanding here is that the applicant could, if they chose to, renovate that broken down old cabin, which is, I think, would be, an outcome that nobody would want. And the applicant doesn't want to do that either. They're just pointing out they could do that. It's within the rules to do that, to renovate an existing structure, which happens to fall like right on that stream bank. And I believe it does flood with some regularity. I see Tim nodding. He might be familiar with this situation.
Yeah, I've been here 40 years. That road's
Yeah.
been underwater many times.
It's that red cabin there. Yeah. And John, you were correct. There is a elevated plane on the lot that has no structure on it right now. And that is where the applicant is proposing to build. They also are proposing to bring in a lot of fill to help protect that elevated space on a lot, which is not something in front of us, but it was something that was mentioned. And we had a discussion in our one of our meetings with the applicant about the vegetation there. There are beautiful oak trees on the property, and the applicant, and this was discussed with the applicant, and they agreed that they would minimize removal of trees, only taking trees down that would interfere with the electrical lines going into the home. It seemed like they had thought that through as well.
Michael, I noticed that there's electrical already on the property. Did they put that in there, or was that there before?
They put that in there some time ago. It's like a temporary service. Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Would you guys like to take a vote? Tim, John, Heather, Mark? Todd, we're still waiting on your approval. I apologize.
Yeah. Well, so my vote doesn't count.
Your input does. Thank you for being
Well,
here.
just
I
was
appreciate it.
wondering, but the person that wants the variance doesn't seem to be afraid of any of this stuff. Doesn't seem to be afraid of stuff.
I think it may be just the shed that they would have to move. It doesn't seem that, is it affecting the home? They're asking the home to be within the 100 feet. Is that what I saw?
They want to build within 100 feet, right? That's what we're talking about.
Mhm. Well, I vote that we affirm the letter.
I affirm the letter.
All right.
I abstain.
Okay. Wonderful. Then we'll go ahead and we'll send the letter to the Zoning Board of Appeals. I appreciate you guys attending. Michael, thank you for being here to answer those questions.
Yeah.
And we'll send it over to you tonight.
You're welcome.
Thanks, everybody.
All right.
Thank you. Good
See
night.
you guys later.
I hope you feel
Bye.
better.
Have a